Welcome back to Worlds 2022 live from the Hulu Theater at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Yesterday we kicked off the group stage with 6 incredible games, seeing regional gods rise to the challenge and clash in front of an incredible crowd. The arena today is filling up as we speak, and I'm joined by some new blood on the desk in Jat and Vedius to kick off day number 2. 6 more games of action coming your way. It's great to see a lot of the fan support in the crowd today. Had banger matches yesterday, and speaking of, there's no better place to start than in the standings. Let's see how things shook out on day number 1. We saw 3 groups do battle just yesterday. Of course, 2 wins apiece for each of the groups. It's Fnatic T1 up top Group A, Damwon Key and JDG taking it for Group B, and then Flying Oyster and Royal Never Give Up down there in Group D, picking up their first wins.
Yeah, gonna get to see our first look at Group C today, but I just gotta say, Dash, like, I'm so happy that League is back in New York.
Oh, okay.
Like, the last few times that I've been in New York for League, something magical has happened. Right? COG versus TSM, one of the best NA finals we've ever had.
Yep, 2015.
SKT versus Rocks, possibly the best League of Legends series that has ever been.
2016 semifinal, amazing.
So, we're only a day in. I haven't been enthralled with the NA results so far, but I would say we have the potential for maybe the best group stage ever because we're in New York.
I was gonna say, because originally you're like, I'm excited. I was like, what? After NA's day yesterday, 0-3, we had it all. We literally
Something great is gonna happen.
We literally had the normal NA Worlds journey in over the course of a single day.
Yeah.
0-3,
yeah.
we got it all, right? We had a team that plays close against the top team, but still drops it. We have another team, our 1 seed kind of get dismantled a little bit. You know, it was just kind of all over the place, and yet it ended in the 0-3 heartbreak that NA is somewhat used to.
Well, look at the bright side. You've gotten it over with sooner rather than later, right?
That's the hope.
If you start from the bottom, the only way you can go is up, when you think about it, right? At the very bottom of the hole.
You could stay at the bottom.
Well, no, as they say, it can't get worse. Right?
Right.
You're at 0-3. I mean, you can't have less than 0 wins, Dash. I'm confident, right? Right?
You can't have less than 0 wins. No one's arguing with you on that point, Vedius. Yeah. I love that you're the most positive right now, it seems, on the NA squad.
That's what I'm here
we'll
for.
See.
Coming into the day. All right, well, after their game versus Fnatic, Jensen shared some insight on the matchup and the road ahead in Group A. Take a look.
Hi, I'm Jensen. I play mid lane for Cloud9. I think our draft is very hard to execute once we fall behind. It also doesn't help that we pretty much have losing lanes everywhere, so we get outscaled and we can't play lane very well. We probably had to be more creative in trying to find opportunities to make stuff happen in the game. I think since we were the first game at Worlds, we had a pretty hard time figuring out how we wanted to draft, but I think Fnatic did a good job at maintaining their priority and pressuring us, so it was very hard for us to play out the game given the circumstances of the draft. I would say in the past years, it was a lot tougher to play against the top teams from Asia. There's things they're doing better than us, but I think we match up against them better this time around than we did in the past.
Jensen looks for the double kill!
For our group at least, there's not really any certainty who's gonna win it. And although we did kind of get smashed by Fnatic, I think a lot of it just came down to draft. Honestly, I think anyone can still take this group at least.
Jensen putting a lot of focus on the draft and the meta read for Cloud9. That's always a point of conversation coming into group stages, teams' adaptability to the patch and their general read on the meta. In best of ones, you can either take a lot of games or give a lot of games by just having the right or the wrong read.
Yeah, I do think for that game, they probably had 1 winning lane, which was top lane, but overall, I did hate the draft for Cloud9. And watching all the games yesterday made me think about, kind of was testing a theory that I had before Worlds.
Okay.
Where the playoffs patch is so different from the Worlds patch that a team's overall performance throughout the year might be a better indicator of their chances at Worlds than how they did during playoffs. Just because there's such a difference. And Cloud9 will be one of those teams that had this huge surge towards the end of the year because playoffs patch was perfect for them. I expect them to struggle a little bit at the start of Worlds. But on the flip side of that, it's also teams like RNG, which won MSI and did bad in playoffs, would do better. So the overall TLDR of this is I think the recent memory of all the #1 seeds, I think they're not necessarily as strong or as dominant as we think.
I mean, we only have to go back to previous worlds and look at like who ended up being in the finals, right? Often there are these favorites where you look back at 2019 when it was G2, FPX, SKT. You look back at 2020 when Damwon, JDG, Top Esports, these teams were considered the best. But then it was actually Suning that ended up making it all the way to the final, usurping both Top Esports and JDG. And these trends have often continued throughout World Championships where there often are these clear favorite teams who seem to have their understanding of how to play pretty much everything. They're not patch dependent in a sense, whereas other teams are often driven to success as a result of the patch that they're playing on. And there are a lot of question marks about these teams that were very reliant on Zeri Yuumi in particular, Sivir Yuumi. How would you be able to adapt? And I think already we're starting to see some teams being able to exploit that and not being able to shift their priorities into the new patch.
Definitely, and then I think the other piece of this conversation, right, is and we've joked about this in the past at times, but the benefit that then some teams might receive by virtue of going through the play-in stage. You get a little bit of time to learn your read on the meta, figure out what works and what doesn't, and if we take a look at just yesterday's results, out of we had 3 play-in teams play, 2 of them get wins. EG had a close game but a loss. I would argue that all 3 of those teams, though, they showed up pretty well.
Yeah, EG was up against the LPL 1 seed and was even or ahead in gold towards the 3 or 4 dragon mark. So I do agree that, like, getting the head start in play-in, even though play-in is a risk in itself, once you are through it, I think it benefits your team.
I mean, one of the greatest examples throughout world's history is G2, right? Back in 2018 when they made the semifinals all the way from play-ins. The fact that they even qualified for that World Championship was shocking in and of itself. Right. But I think play-ins has repeatedly demonstrated that it gives you a great opportunity to both establish yourself on the patch, figure out what your priorities are, and we look at teams like Fnatic, we look at teams like RNG. They came into the drafts confident yesterday. They clearly executed upon their game plans, and they were able to deliver. So I have a lot of hype and expectations around these teams that have come through plans.
This brings us very neatly back to our meta conversation and another look at champion presence here at the World Championship. We bumped from 90 to 93 yesterday. We've now had to add a second page to our lovely, way too complex
read through
graphic.
this for me, Dash.
You want me to hit all these names really quick?
What are the win rates,
you know,
the presences?
I kind of like that as a challenge. Maybe by the end of the tournament, I'll memorize the whole thing. And
I'll memorize all 93 champions.
Benius and I will mumble rap it.
How about
at the
I
end
take
of the
page
tournament.
2 and you take page 1?
Perfect. We'll split it up, 50-50, yeah. The Singed pick, how about that?
Yeah, I didn't like
it.
It was terrible, but yeah, that's on the list. Sure.
Fair enough. Hey, it's expanded the graphic now.
I do appreciate how the graphics team has had enough of you, Dash, and they're not going to resize the graphic ever again. They just made a second page.
Yeah.
That was my request because they said they can't put any more on this, and I was like, great, just start a second page. I think they thought I was going to say, then let's kill the graphic and we're done for Worlds, and I was like, no, we're just going to go to another page. It's perfect.
What I think is really great about, well, this graphic, even if it's not the easiest to read, is it demonstrates how flexible our meta is right now, right? Often at World Championships, they're often dictated by certain champions, and while I think we can all agree that things like Aatrox is certainly very prevalent, it feels like that teams are coming up with answers. They do have ways to shut it down, but everywhere else on the board, it feels like that there's flexibility in what teams are willing to bring out and play.
A reminder that the world's record is 94 unique champions. We're at 93 right now, so with one more getting played, we already tie that, and we have plenty of opportunities to surpass it. But as we talk about the development of that champion presence graphic, you note already there's no 100% anymore, right? Aatrox, who was kind of the last holdout from play-ins and 100% presence, has been knocked down, and so while they're very unlikely to be any more 100% presence champions, I do think we need to talk about Maokai, because that as a pick, well, he's not going to get to 100%.
No, he will. He will. Don't worry about it. He will. He'll find a way.
He'll find a way.
Like, I know how statistics work, okay? Maokai is a champion that I think many people expected to be prevalent in the meta, but not quite to this extent. And for me, what makes him so valuable in pro scene is his flexibility. He can be flexed into top, jungle, and support. And when you look at pro teams, you look across the history of Worlds, champions that can be flexed are just so valuable because it allows you to pivot your strategy and it opens you up a little bit more in the draft. So I think that alone gives Maokai so much power on top of the fact that he has received so many positive changes.
Agree or disagree? Any team can and should pick Maokai, but if you are the better team, you should never let the opposing team get it.
I'll disagree.
You disagree?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well.
How so? Why?
I think he's a scaling pick.
Okay.
And I have a philosophy that the worst team should never prioritize
Shouldn't pick scaling.
They need to find a way to be at even footing at 20 minutes so they have a chance to
What do you make of the fact that Maokai on the quote-unquote perceived worst team in play-ins had a higher win rate?
I mean, because they're playing against the same level, though.
No. I'm talking about playing against like an RNG or playing against like a major region team.
So the thing that you're arguing, though, is that Maokai as a champion is almost like a Band-Aid. It can make worse teams better. That's
exactly what I'm arguing.
Right?
Yeah,
which could work.
Right?
Yeah, which is a fair argument. But then, like, surely if you apply that to the best jungler in the world,
then it gets no effect.
Like, if the best jungler in the world gets his hands on what seems to be one of the strongest champions on the patch, I feel like that Maokai is just turbo broken.
Becomes damaged.
Yeah, I feel like
he's still a super strong pick.
Yeah,
fair enough.
Just you're allowed to get it through if you're playing something early game.
Okay, fair enough. There you have it. All right, from here, let's jump to some ADCs because that's, I think, the last part of the discussion around the meta. Super flexible meta for ADCs, where it did feel like in the playoffs it was really only about 2 champions, Zeri and Sivir.
And this is really what I'm super excited about, because for the longest time, fans were complaining about the fact that it was just Zeri Sivir, some combination of this, and now we've moved far away from that, and the AD carry pool now seems incredibly versatile. Like, they leave an impact on your screen every time you see them play, and I feel like things like Aphelios, Misfortune, Sivir still involved in the meta. We've seen a little bit of Tristana, like Caitlyn. Everything is available right now, and I think that just makes the AD carry pool super exciting to watch.
That MF win rate is pretty brutal.
Yeah.
What's going on there? What's going on there?
Didn't go well yesterday. I mean, just bad teams played it.
Everything's just going to get reduced to who played it
No,
at this point?
mean, listen, there is a lot of diversity in this right now, and I think what's interesting is the Aphelios 3-0. I think Aphelios is very good in more front-to-back settings when the other team has generally somewhat shorter range. If we get into a situation where Aphelios is playing more frequently against LeBlanc, or if there's more Orianna or Azir, it does become a little bit harder to play. But yesterday, they were able to play it against a lot of like somewhat squishy topsides with Fjords. That's where Aphelios is going to shine.
All right. Next, we're going to play a little bit of a game. We're in New York. We talked pizza yesterday. We're going to continue that pizza conversation with asking you at home, Twitch chat, which pizza would you order? The 3 of us have come prepared with a pizza that we think represents some aspect of the world's group stage so far.
Does this make perfect sense to you, just like it does to me?
It makes absolute perfect sense.
Perfect sense.
Yeah, there's no question.
No
one should have questions.
Listen, the truth is, we wanted to sell you all pizzas, and this is the only way that they would let us do it. So
look, it's just like it's an exercise in if we were going to open a pizza shop, which one of us would be the most successful? When we open, you're right. Whose pizza should be the marquee pizza? And so my pizza that I present to the world, please.
We have no idea what these
The world is your oyster pizza. It is a classic pizza with a phenomenal tomato sauce base, a good helping of mozzarella cheese, and then absolutely littered with raw oysters.
Raw oysters?
I mean, well, that is how you eat an oyster, by the way. It's not like that's not
I've never
very
actually
strange.
eaten one before, but I don't think it would be good on a pizza.
We're going to go eat oysters
I don't think we should
later. Yes, we definitely are, sir. How have you not had an oyster? So that's it. Mine's a simple pizza.
You're just an oyster fan.
Big oyster fan. Look, hey, I said 10% oyster, flying oyster cheese world domination. They're 1-0 right now. Like that's now like 100% for me.
Okay.
I pretty much
that's
locked
a sales
in.
pitch.
Well, and when the oysters take over, I want to be in their favor. So I'm making a pizza, exactly, for them.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So that's my pitch.
I wanted to try and make a pizza that everyone would be able to partake in.
Oh, okay.
And I know a lot of people like watching like NA fail, so I have a half and half pizza. The top half is the Go Airport Fast, and the bottom half is NA Glory. So Airport Fast is more Fiora, there's NA Jace, there are oysters in there.
Lose to the oysters again, the oyster overlords.
And a certain team's logo. The bottom team, it's more successful if Berserker's willing to play early game. Callista, that works. It's got to be with the American flag. Azir is also great.
And Aatrox in there.
And Aatrox is just pick the stuff that can win lane and then transition well and do it with pride.
So your pizza is cover all its bases pizza?
Well, yeah, because people enjoy League of Legends for various reasons.
Right.
So I had to make sure that both people can have a slice.
Okay.
I appreciate, playing to everybody, but my fear is that if I'm a North American fan, I don't want half my pizza to be Go Airport Fast.
Well, we have Vedius here, so he's going to eat that part.
I'm not interested in sharing with him, though. I want a pizza all to myself.
Listen. Remember, in chat, you can vote for either Jat or you can vote for
Yeah.
Dash.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that. You can start spamming Vedius right now, because I'm going to introduce you to the Rogue Pizza, okay? Now, it's got a solid base
What is
of what
going
I
on?
call Odoamne sauce, okay? A very solid foundation of Odoamne sauce, sprinkled on with the Malrang cheese. That's what you can see on your screen right now. That level 2 gank that you weren't expecting, boom. That's that extra kick to your pizza that you needed. Now,
there-
where's the flavor coming
that
from?
bananas?
Hang on, we'll get to that.
Okay.
Where is the flavor coming from? That's Trymbi. It's wholesome. It's like eating happiness when you have some Trymbi on your pizza.
I like
But
happiness.
coming with Trymbi is that extra bit of spice, that sauce, and that is the Soraka. That's why the bananas are there, you see.
Okay.
Trymbi is
There he
so
is.
wholesome, but he adds that
Rogue's
spice.
right
He's
there.
like the sweet and sour that you always wanted on pizza. And then, of course, to round things out, any good pizza needs pineapple, so I also put pineapple on the pizza as well.
Hey, I'm not against
So,
pineapple on
Vedius,
pizza
in the
necessarily,
chat, we
so-
all know you want the Rogue Time pizza.
Make
it's
sure you're
coming to
spamming.
New York right now.
Because, yeah, absolutely guaranteed, whichever one is voted the winner will be made. And,
be made?
Yeah, and available online for order.
Will
I
it?
actually think we should get it made and we should have to eat it on the desk. That'd be
No, I don't think we should do that. But
You don't
thanks
want
for
to?
the suggestion.
Oyster pizza, that's all I'm saying.
Oyster big fan of the Odoamne sauce, apparently. That's why
I love Odoamne sauce.
Let's see if we can get those results up as quickly as possible.
yeah.
It's because he asked for votes.
you.
Get those
Yeah.
results down.
That's
Screw
trash.
that. Nah, move on. This
The
was
Rogue Time pizza.
trash.
This was a bad segment
What
idea.
time is it?
I fully regret coming up with that idea.
Thank you,
So
Pat.
we're going to
Yeah.
move ourselves right along. Today, our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz will see two titans of league history clashing in a battle for regional supremacy and a shot at owning Group A. It's T1 versus Fnatic.
T1 versus Fnatic. Two organizations that have put their names into the history books. However, both of these teams are in the middle of a new chapter and are not content to rest on the successes of previous rosters. Instead, they want to make their own legacy. In our featured matchup, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz, T1 are back where they won their last World Championship.
SK Telecom have overcome every challenge. They are the undisputed best team in the world.
예전에도 메디슨 스퀘어 가든에서 우승했던 적이 있었기 때문에 이번에도 굉장히 좋은 느낌을 받고 있고
And have their eyes set on number 4 with the help of the terrifying topside duo in Zeus and Odoamne.
Hunter just walks in and takes it. It's so casual. Now Viper's in trouble. Viper's been locked down. They've got the Ornal, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Instantly, Owner into the backside, looking, fishing for a kick. He will not find it. EDG running for their lives, getting cut down. The Yuumi empowering the carries. FLICKR with the double. EDG falling apart.
Fnatic will put their faith in the carry from the play-in stage, as Humanoid has proven time and time again that he's able to get consistent leads in the mid lane.
Nature's Grasp, roots up two. Shelly gets off the charge. Here comes Call with the Forge Guard. Throws Berserker flying in the air. He's looking for the bullet time, but the damage being done, and Sven is killed. Emperor's Divide, slide and glide. Humanoid takes down Blabber.
Will he be able to repeat the same performance against the unkillable Demon King himself?
I guess we will see how we compare. It's really hard to say, but I think I can take FLICKR on.
Keep your eyes on the mid lane in this exciting face-off that could set the stage for a stacked Group A.
Obviously, a lot of focus on the mid lane there, but these two orgs have run into each other many a time on the international stage. But I will admit, I'm a little fearful for Fnatic's chances when I consider how dominant T1 looked just yesterday.
Yeah, T1 beat EDG in 22 minutes.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, they played, to me, full solo queue. Like, they were just completely out there trying to style on people, taking any fight possible. Very different from what people would have expected the last time SKT was in New York when they won the World Championship back in 2016. So going to be a very interesting matchup.
I mean, it's crazy to think that every time these teams have met internationally, it has always been so close. Back in MSI in 2015, we went to the full 5 games. That was back in the Reign over Huni era. And then when they met at Worlds in 2019, as you can see on your screen, they went 1-1 in the group stages with Nemesis getting his solo kill onto FLICKR as well. But when we think about specifically Humanoid, he was on that Splice roster in 2019
Right.
that had to go up against SKT1 in the best of 5. He was only able to take a single game off the organization after winning 3-1. And there is a bit of a rivalry starting to heat up between these two players, because while their history is not very long, in terms of the pedigree, Humanoid has risen to stardom domestically. Last year, he was by far and away considered the best mid laner in Europe, and after joining Fnatic, this was supposed to be the super team. Whereas for FLICKR, it's that young rookies built up around around him. After, yes, last year making it to the semifinals, now really representing Korea as one of the best, it looks like that we have two teams in form, ready to go head-to-head.
Without a doubt, and look at those statistics. Obviously, this is just from day one of the group stage, so both players putting up very solid performances. For Humanoid, it was so much about the laning phase there against Jensen, completely shutting him out and being able to take over. And that, too, is a lot of their play-in storyline, Humanoid being the major carry for the squad.
And that's been what Humanoid has completely excelled at since joining the World Championship here, is destroying people in lane. And I know FLICKR, when he first arrived on the scene back in 2013, was solo killing everyone, but he's definitely evolved into a player that moves a lot more. So I think that is going to be contrasting styles, where Humanoid really tries to dominate the mid lane, and FLICKR tries to take over the map.
Now that, of course, is our third game of the day. So let's take a look at our schedule and see what else we have on the docket. We kick things off with Rogue versus DRX. Our first look at both of those teams here in the group stage. Obviously, DRX sprinting through the play-ins to get to this point. We follow that up with EU versus NA in the Evil Geniuses versus G2. Then, like I said, Fnatic T1 in that third match of the day before we get to Edward Gaming Cloud9. Top Esports versus GAM, and Dom Kia versus JDG to close things out. Now, from here, we got to talk about the fact that we'll see all three teams, EU teams rather, in action here in the first half of the day. And to set the stage, here's what Jankos had to say after the loss versus Dom Kia.
Hello, I'm Jankos, jungler for G2 Esports. I think that both of us had a draft in mind, as against Damon, and I think that they outplayed us. I don't think it was much of a draft difference, it was just like pure play difference. I feel like we could have played much better the first 8 minutes of the game. The main strength of Damon is mid-jungle, Canyon and Showmaker. I feel like they have to play around them, right? And this time I think they outperformed me in Caps, so hopefully next time we can step up. I think the mentality is still there. We like to joke around about our losses because it helps us to cope with them, and I think that's completely fine as long as we still learn from mistakes and take them seriously enough to be able to realize where they lie and kind of work on fixing them. I feel like we are actually quite good as a team, and even though we couldn't show it as much against Damon, you know, that game was very one-sided, so I'm looking forward to actually have an even game so we can show what we are capable of.
We wait for that second match of the day to see them clash against Evil Geniuses. But our first game here has the team who beat G2 in the LEC Finals, Rogue versus DRX. Let's start by talking about Rogue here in 2022.
I mean, so at the beginning of the year, people had very little faith in this Rogue organization. After losing Inspired and Han Summer, and with the addition of Malrang and Comp, people were like, there's no way that this roster is even going to be comparable. But they surprised many. Malrang came out with this hyper-aggressive jungle style. Comp individually was outclassing many of the AD carries, and in spring, regular season, they were surprisingly dominant, falling short in playoffs. It was really in summer, where the regular season wasn't that good for them, where they seemed to show weaknesses, where they seemed to show inconsistencies, but then really showing up in playoffs, really finding their style, and coming together to win the organization's first ever title.
Such a good year for them, and I think they're a huge example of how growth isn't always up and to the right. Sometimes you have a good spring, then they struggle a little bit in summer, but then they were better than ever in summer playoffs and now here at Worlds.
Yeah, and along with the org storyline, of course, is the man on the left side of your screen, Odoamne, picking up his title. We went through the graphic yesterday. So many times has he, you know, been second or third to somebody else's first, but for him to be able to snag that and move into the world champion as the 1 seed, that's got to feel good.
It's for many European fans, it's great to see him finally lift the trophy, because he has always been the bridesmaid rather than the bride. The man that's always come so close. He was kind of like the king of third place matches for the longest time. And the fact that he's always had this great energy on broadcasts of someone who's just so tired and hates all the young people. People have just come to love him over the years, and seeing him lift that trophy was very emotional for everyone. Whether it be G2 fans or Rogue fans, the sentiment was, it's so great to see Odoamne lift that trophy. But now they need to prove it on the international stage, because when we look at their international results, it's not been pretty for Rogue.
And not only do they have to prove it on the international stage, they now got to do it here against DRX. So now, while they are the 4th seed out of the LCK, they kind of smashed through play-ins, Jat, and that's something that I think a lot of people are trying to now figure out. How strong is this team really?
And it's going to be interesting. I think if we're talking about the history of this team, though, we got to talk about that first.
Yeah, because back in 2020, this is the first time that we actually saw DRX, and it was a roster with both Chovy and Deft on it. They really were the superstars, and many people were frustrated that we didn't really get to see their full potential, because in the quarterfinals, they ran into Dam1. They ended up getting 3-0'd, and we didn't really get to see much of them. This roster then dissolved in 2021, and the organization struggled. Back then, this year, they reacquired Deft, and they were are on a bit of a resurgence, actually securing 4th place at the end of the regular season last split. But overall, it's been a challenging year for DRX, better than 2021, of course. But the fact that they qualified to Worlds and the way that they did, I think was a surprise to many.
Yeah, it's actually two conflicting theories I have. One of the theories is the teams that were good throughout the whole year will be good at Worlds. That's not DRX. But play-in teams and also LCK teams at Worlds have been hugely successful. The player I want to focus on right now, though, is Zeka. Because when a lot of people think about this team, they just think Deft, Deft, Deft. But for me, Zeka was the top performing player in all of play-ins.
Agreed.
These are his stats just amongst the mid laners from play-in. You can see huge KDA damage per minute as well as laning phase stats. He just was so huge in allowing space for them to have 2 big carries. There's a lot of complaints about the top side of their map still, switching between 2 different junglers throughout the play-in stage and throughout the summer split. But having Zeka and Deft as their carries, I think, makes them a very formidable foe.
And I think that when you kind of look at how they approach the game, it's going to be super interesting because I think a lot of what made DRX successful, especially in their climb towards the actually qualifying, was the jungle. There are a lot of question marks around Pioshik and would he be able to perform? Could he actually perform in the playing stage? He definitely looked better. But now that you have Zeka also performing, Deft continuing to be consistent, makes this team a much scarier team fighting team than I think that they were before. The big question is, do they have that consistency in the early game? Because Rogue as a team have been very well known for dominant laners that Malrang is very quick to enable. So this early game power of we're going to oppress you from the moment that the laning phase starts is something that DRX is going to have to find a way to weather as much as they can.
I mean, playstyle conversation with these two teams is interesting just because anytime you hear Deft is on a roster, I would immediately go, well, that's a bot side focused team, right?
Yeah.
Or at least it should be. And when a meta is maybe Zeri Sivir focused, I'm like, yes, this is perfect for us. But now with things kind of opening up a bit and with Zeka putting up a play-ins performance like he did, I think it makes this team so much more flexible, right, than maybe people would have initially thought. And I think it's going to be harder to approach a game against DRX because they don't feel as one-dimensional maybe.
Yeah, and I can't wait to see the AD carry matchup, Comp versus Deft, and just also how the bottom lanes work in general, because Comp's resurgence, or not necessarily resurgence, but performance in playoffs was so impressive. Their ability to just take control of every lane while still having huge team fight presence. Somewhat Deft-like in the way he was carrying DRX.
I mean, it's a bit of a Cinderella story for Comp because he was on a 10th place team for 2 years, and then he was benched. He was benched, and people would say it wasn't due to, well, the organization said it wasn't due to his individual skill, it was because they needed more of a vocal voice, but his addition to Rogue was not seen positively. And the fact that this split, he was ranked 2nd in All-Pro. For me, he was by far the best performing AD carry during the regular season, and the way that he performed during playoffs as well, this man is looking to perform in his very first international event ever. So he will be a rookie to the international stage. To have his first game be up against the legend that is Deft as well, how could you not be excited to see these two superstar AD carries go up against each other?
Yeah, and I think when you see the kill participation from Comp, it shows you how involved he is in everything that Rogue does in terms of actually generating kills.
Yeah, first in the league for 80 carries there, it looks like. And so, yeah, definitely expect him to be a part of all of the big plays there on the side of Rogue. 2 minutes to go till we dive into the games. It's time to put you two on record. Rogue versus DRX. Let's get to some predictions.
So, a lot of people are going to call me biased, but it's hard not to predict Rogue in this situation. It is Europe's first seed against
hard? DRX. That doesn't seem very hard to say. DRX.
No, I'm saying Rogue. I'm saying it's quite comfortably a Rogue win, I feel. Rogue's early game has proven to be extremely dominant. I'm confident in their consistency in their draft, and I feel like that they just have more lanes to play through than DRX. I'm hoping that I'm not digging my own grave here, because I know that LCK versus... I mean, Rogue internationally as well has not been the powerhouse, but statistically, they have always won their first game at Worlds. So I'm feeling pretty confident, Chat.
Chat, bring some sense to the desk.
I mean, it could happen. Absolutely. It's 1 versus 4, right? But you know what else could happen and almost always happens?
What?
LCK's total dominance of Worlds group stage. Of 26 teams to approach Worlds group stage from the LCK since 2014, 25 of them have advanced from the group. Rogue's never advanced from the group. So DRX, I'm going to predict them in this game, even though they are the 4th seed, just because the LCK's overall dominance in group stage, just people they see them play against other top LCK teams and they imagine them to be weak. But when they show up on this stage, they are so locked in, and I think we've seen that during play.
Well, the good news is this isn't a must-win for either of these teams to get out of the group. But, of course, it will do a great service to them to start off the group stage in 1-0 fashion. When it comes to the way in which, or the lane that you think is going to make or break this matchup, Verius, what is it? Is it going to be the mid lane? Oh, it's going to be bot lane.
The bot lane.
Okay.
I think that when you look at how Rogue have played, it's very aggressive bot laners. They are happy to lock in things like the Kalista. They will prioritize it. They will look to try and kill you. And Malrang is a player that will enable his laners to get those early kills. So keep your eyes on that bot lane. I think they're going for Deft's head.
Well, there you have it. A split desk to kick off the day. 10 seconds to go. We're going to dive into our 6 games of the group stage here on day number 2. We're heading down to the stage to meet Rogue and DRX.
일단 저는 항상 매번 월즈 때마다 새로운 다짐을 하는데 이번 월즈 때는 또 다시 저 자신을 증명하려는 무대라고 생각하고 있습니다.
I'm super excited to play against T1. When I think of T1, I think of League of Legends, I guess, and of FLICKR, of course. He's the greatest player of all time.
항상 유럽팀 상대로 저희가 이길 거라고 자신하고 있진 않아서 충분히 경계해야 되는 팀이라고 생각하고
We will see how we compare. I think I can take FLICKR on.
They got us an MSI, but Worlds is the only tournament that matters. We have a score to settle.
I was confident playing against G2 already at MSI, and now I think we are better than we were before. I think they're probably the weakest team in our group.
Evil Genius is the weakest team in our group. Biggest advantage was just our team play. We did beat Evil Geniuses before, and we have to do it again.
We already sent Matt home. G2's next.
일단 담원기가 되게 잘하는 팀인 것 같고 근데 하지만 저희 팀이 더 잘하니까 내일 꼭 이길 수 있을 것 같아요.
진동은 전체적으로 약점이 없고 운영을 잘하는 팀이라고 생각해서 저희가 잘 준비하면 이길 수 있을 것 같아요.
일단 20년도에 담원기아랑 저희랑 이제 1대1 조별리그였는데 이번에는 저희가 2대1을 이겨가지고 복수하고 싶었고
뭐 제 닉네임대로 쇼메이커답게 쇼를 많이 보여드릴 수 있도록 하겠습니다.
Welcome back for more group stage action here on day 2. After finally conquering the LEC, they are here to take on the world, presenting Rogue! to be reckoned with by taking down the reigning MSI champions in Mexico City. From Korea's LCK, please welcome DRX! Kick off day 2 of groups here at Worlds 2022. Let's hear it, New York, one more time.
Oh, baby, let's get straight into it. Day 2, day 1 was already so exciting. Worlds is incredibly stacked. We saw the analyst test talking about 93 unique champions already. The record is 94, and we're only on day 2.
We can bring it right here.
Probably could, I think, you know.
Beryl was actually, last year at Worlds was tied with Fudge for the most unique champion picks of any players. Both of them had 12.
Really?
So he is one of those really flexible players.
And I mean, I don't know how you get more flexible than us seeing Singed. I'm personally a very big fan of Sentinel lanes. Didn't work out so well, prior, but I'm still looking to see a whole lot more fun out of this one, of course. Rogue making their Worlds debut. DRX, who 5-0'd in play-ins, first time seeing them here in the group stage, of course, as well. And let's see if we get into this draft, because last time we saw, they were stomping.
First ban is going to be the Jarvan from DRX up against Rogue, denying Malrang. Of course, we saw him in the LEC playoffs in the finals, especially just so much early game action. He has a very, very low CS kind of difference against the jungler. He's always down in creeps, so he looks for those active plays. Want to shut that down.
A lot of targeted bans so far as well. Comp taking away his Caitlyn, something that he's been confident to play. I do think you really have to take this Comp Trymbi bot lane very, very seriously for the side of DRX. It had been such a strength for them in playoffs.
And with this Kalista Caitlyn ban, Maokai first pick gonna come in for Rogue, gonna get that jungler rolling. Level 3, of course, really good gank setup and team fights, of course, with the ultimate. MF is something that I'm thinking about for DRX here, with the AD carries being down. Deft's already played 2 games of it. We've also seen things like Tristana coming out of him, so depends which route he wants to take in terms of aggressive AD carries. Of course, Rogue will have a little bit more information on DRX because of that play-ins. Rogue, of course, have been quiet for the last month or so.
Absolutely, and I'm just so interested to see what DRX's approach is going to be against Rogue. When I think of them from the LEC, I think of team fighting, I think of incredible individual laners, team that builds advantages through their 1v1s, through their 2v2s, and then takes that to the team fight stage where they can really take over. DRX, I do think, can get aggressive early, though. It'll be interesting to see if they want to push the pace of the game.
Wow, we've got a Lucien Nami insta-lock for Rogue. That's so interesting, because obviously with the changes, the electrocute doesn't proc on the E anymore, so gonna go for something like the Airy. You have to imagine, what does Zeka go for? We've seen his Akali, we've seen the damage this mid laner can do in play-ins. Azir would be more of a range champion, but if Lucian's dashing in, I think Akali could work really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't think it was gonna be LeBlanc because Maokai's already locked in.
Yeah.
We know this guy is so good on the Akali. Is going to make it dangerous for Lucien potentially here. And you already have Sejuani, you have the Akali, you have that range threat of the MF ulti. So Comp is going to have to position, I think, incredibly well, in these team fights to really be able to get it done.
I really wonder what Larssen's going to pick here. If you think back to the LEC finals, he was playing a mage meta up against Humanoid and Caps in semis in the finals. We did see a little bit of his LeBlanc as well. That's going to get taken off the board, but I'm expecting a control mage coming out from Larssen, and then some kind of carry blind top here from Odoamne along the lines of a Renekton or a Gnar.
Yeah, it's so interesting. With the Lucien Nami coming through, do you think that we're going to see Rogue going more towards like full-on early game, mid-game skirmishing, playing more heavily for the objectives? Because that really was not their style at all, I would say, in the LEC. They were really a team to focus more on just increasing their gold leads and then looking for team fights late.
I think they'll use their bot lane push and the aggressive plays that the bot lane can make as a bridge to the mid to late game. Yeah. They'll probably pick a scaling mage alongside something like Renekton taken away. You have to wonder what the top lane picks are for Odo. Gnar, GP are things that kind of come to mind here, but it's just a question of how Larssen wants to match up against this Akali.
Unless you really like your jungle picks here and you just say, hey, safe tank at the top side. I feel like so frequently we see blue team save the Maokai Flex for last. Ultimately, they still have to show whether he's jungle or top lane, as DRX to make sure Kingen can answer whatever comes through for Odoamne. Lux mid, probably not the option, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a bit of a tough call here for Rogue. I think Azir is a no-brainer, just a bit annoying into things like the Akali and the Amumu diving on top of you, but Really good scaling, really good range. Is that going to be... Odoamne is a very high prior Maokai player. He loves Maokai, he loves Rumble. If this is a Graves, that wouldn't surprise me if they flex it. Vedius was talking on the desk about the power of the flexibility of this champ. I do think it's more of a jungle pick for Malrang because of the amount it can set up. But Trundle's locked in, so that's going to be a Maokai top. Wants to have that 80 damage in jungle to mismatch his mid laner.
Now I'm just so interested to see what the answer is actually going to be here, you know, for Kingen. Is it going to be actually Juhan playing the Sejuani, or is it going to be a Sejuani top as the answer? Because you can go to some of the really aggressive counters, some of the melee matchups that can be very, very difficult. But it is looking like if Lee Sin gets locked in here, it would just be Sejuani top against the Maokai, much more of a farm lane. It would feel like DRX are playing more heavily down towards mid and bot. So very interesting. I was kind of expecting more of them trying to look for a counter to that Maokai and actually just slam that Sejuani into jungle. But going Lee Sin here, a focus on playmaking. It is going to be a lot of threat on this mid-range Lucien here between the Amumu, the Akali, the Lee Sin. All of these abilities he's going to have to be watching out for, because if he gets locked down, the MF ulti will be there to clean him up.
Yeah, I suppose the logic is just the Trundle's so good into Sejuani jungle, right? You're forced to go things like the spellbook on Sejuani jungle that we've seen. Can't remember who it was, but it just avoids the aftershock proc to give the Trundle the stats, right? So the value is there, but they value more having Lee Sin, Akali, a lot more kill threat, a lot more level 6 spike onto this Azir to try and force mid push to help out their side lanes, most notably bot. But if you look at both comps, tanks in the top lane probably going to be very quiet this game. This game's going to be heavily about keeping mid push for Rogue and making sure their bot lane can dash forwards.
This is going to be a fun game. I think bot lane's going to be spicy. I think there's a lot of pressure back and forth. If you do misstep, honestly, Amumu can lock you down long enough that MF gets the kill or the jungler shows up. On the other side, Trundle either has natural escapes. Those ganks feel pretty decent as well, depending on how pressure goes. If they're low, maybe you dive. As you mentioned, bot lane, mid lane, probably going to be the place where a lot is going on. This is going to be so much fun to watch. Does Rogue continue on the domination they had in the LEC? Does DRX continue the domination they've had at Worlds so far? Not only beating RNG, but 5-0ing their group, and now to see if they continue on the era of Korean domination. Only one team ever from the LCK since 2014 has ever failed in the group stage. DRX, maybe with some tough competition, but they have looked so far pretty amazing here at the World Championship. And our first game today is going to start right about now. Rogue versus DRX. We are on to Summoner's Rift.
Oh baby, let's get into it. And just small talking point before we begin with level 1's Airy on the Nami. Not a surprise, the electrocute changes will help out in that lane phase a little bit more.
We get some DRX chants from the crowd.
And there's actually a lot of fans cheering. Okay, now we got the TSM.
There you go.
You can't escape a day of Worlds without the TSM chant.
Run from it.
But
TSM chants always arrive.
They always arrive indeed. So looking at this early game, interesting ward from DRX. They've actually decided to ward over the Dragon Pit, to spot Malrang. So this will early spot a late invade if they decide to go for it. No one from Rogue knows that that ward is there, and Trundle being in that vicinity makes DRX think that if he's going to start on the bot side, they will know. But it looks like he's going to run up towards his blue buff. I think that ward there is just avoiding any kind of level 2 gank. Red to bot, they'll see him a lot earlier than if it was in Tribush.
I mean, I think that's the thing, right? It's like these guys do not have natural escapes. Amumu burning his flash level 1, that's going to suck a whole lot. And I mean, honestly, land a bubble after pillar, that's going to be a force flash. They'll kill the ward, but at least information is known that Trundle's starting top side. And there's no info you're going to get other than that in the first place. You'll see him go blue, then run towards Gromp, and, you know, inventory is off at that point anyway, but at least in the pathing start.
And actually very, very interesting. So DRX, with that ward over the wall there at Dragon Pit, tracked where Malrang went with his pink ward and saw that he spent his pink ward. So they noticed it must have been in bot lane Tribrush. So level 1, they go straight in the bot lane Tribrush, they kill off the pink ward. So no value gained there from Malrang. Despite going for that early ward to try to cover his bot laners. They know Lee Sin likely is going to be clearing down towards bot side, you know, meeting up with that Amumu, and now they don't have that additional coverage.
Early trade looks pretty good, though. Airy, pretty helpful when those trades go a bit dicier, though. And ultimately, the shield helps him a little bit. Trymbi gets a second hit there as he attacks back toward Deft. And honestly, heavy scrapping is generally going to favor Nami, so the healing's going to feel pretty good. So unless the pressure keeps going, eventually the health difference just goes to the blue side.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The sustain is going to help Rogue out. They need to be careful not to get all in too much. Dude. Yeah, Deft not in range to follow that one up. The wave's slowly coming into DRX. I wonder if Rogue... No, they actually... Not level 2 yet on comp. He lost... Yeah, he must have lost some experience there, so they're going to have to give up the push in this lane for now.
Yeah, and you can see Lee Sin already level 3. He is just on the blue. But Malrang moving down towards bot, knowing he may have to potentially cover here as the wave is pretty neutral.
Yeah, just looking at all 3 lanes here. A lot of trading in all 3. Odo has the top push. Larssen has the push into Zeka. We saw this matchup from Scout versus FLICKR yesterday in the EDG T1 game. And despite T1 dominating that game, the level 1 to 6 was really rough for FLICKR in this Akali matchup. He had to TP back pretty early on, even got chunked out after TPing back, so the Azir should be able to control the wave. Comp now level 2 can start to walk up and contest. Juhan is on the way down, wants to get this bot crab up in 3 seconds. Malrang actually skipped his raptors, so he won't be in time to contest this crab. Also won't ding over to level 4 either, so they're going to meet each other in Tribush. Larssen loses very hard in the 1v1, so he's not going to take the face check, and Malrang might level up the ward. No, he's extremely close.
Gets the ward kill all the same, though, so vision not great on that side. It means the chance at a gank is going to happen. W, a little bit of vision, a little bit of damage, chilling down there. 15 to 22 in CS, though, and in top side. Needs his passive back up. I don't know when it's coming back. Kingen does not go for more. If Odo had the passive in grasp, he probably heals through it.
Yeah, Kingen must not have had his Q back up there. You know, if the Q is off cooldown there, you're definitely going to go in for it. But you do have to be careful in these matchups. Early on, Sejuani does have some pretty good power. The Ignite coming up there is going to be dangerous. Definitely
damage across first, the flash, the foe! And first blood for Comp. Welcome to the World Championship.
2v2 already going in Rogue's favor. Great bubble there. Deft actually falls and Comp gets the kill. Larssen having the mid pressure. There might be a cross map here from DRX to look for a dive on this top lane. Look for Odoamne if they can look for that kill. It's going to ward the Tribush. Has TP, has a cookie as well. Do they go for it? Kingen has the Ignite. He might have to be the one to start this pipe up.
Gonna get the heal, here comes the dive, gets in the shield, and now Odo, can he survive it? Flashes up, jumps to a minion, drops the aggro, running back, they have to drop the aggro. Kingen, 120 health left on a hand, but Juhan, full energy, full health bar, Odo, E flashes, jumps back to a minion though, still forced the flash.
Good, very well played by Odo, hanging on in that 1v2, and DRX will have to back it up. Rogue looking really solid so far, you know, in these early minutes, all the way there, still there for Odo to actually farm up.
Yeah, and Larssen and Zeka still trading. Larssen hasn't TP'd back just yet, neither has Zeka, but the CS is really in his favor. Dive a little bit scuffed on that top side. Odo will be able to catch his wave.
Trymbi shadowing in case there is a play. Obviously, it looks like Zeka would like the lane to reset. Larssen has enough mana to be dangerous, but Zeka's health bar is low, doesn't want a bad recall. As the wave sits in the middle of the lane, but no gank to be had. Larssen not doing anything here, so Trymbi gives him a little bit of damage and goes, never mind, nothing else happening. Zeka goes to the trade, a little bit of damage. One auto back in, Larssen once again out of mana, again heavily trades.
Yeah, I mean, Larssen really wants to get out of this lane. Now that he's out of mana, they want to be able to actually reset this, but you can see Malrang walking through mid. Didn't actually help him fully push it out because I think he's, again, nervous about potential plays down towards bot. This will mean a pretty easy reset for Zeka, though. You know, in this Akali versus Azir matchup, it's often not about health versus health. It's actually just like health on the Akali side versus mana on the Azir side. And if you can actually get him out of mana in these situations, then there's not really that much more threat, and the lane really starts to stabilize for Akali.
Yeah, Malrang's been a little bit quiet so far. We saw Juhan going for those early top dives. Hasn't really been able to contest too much in the river. He's been shadowing his bot lane majority of the time. Of course, path down here on the second respawn, covering Rogue on this bot push out. Making sure the waves can crash safely and there's no threat of an all-in. The Amumu still has flash, right? So there's always that threat, that looming threat of an all-in where Larssen can gap close. But we talked about the level 6 power spike. Zeka's base, he's going to TP back with the alternator. Amp Tome as well. And on that level 6, he will have kill pressure onto Larssen. Juhan just needs that level 6 as well so they can start contesting this mid 2v2 and impacting both side lanes.
Both sides has a stun, but it's still going to hit Nami though. Trymbi could be in danger, but the bubble down does not land on the AD carry. Second bandage shots, I believe, missed, so Beryl has nothing, but the Q's going to land. Juhan on the board now. Comp forced to run back to his tower, taking a shot from Deft.
There's the power of the Amumu on the setup. The Larssen can just come through lane because he has two forms of gap close the Amumu, and no flash on the Nami after the initial one means the second one will land and Larssen can follow up.
And with Glacial Augment, it's actually so difficult to actually even disengage from that as the Nami. You know, even if you're able to get hit by that first one, try to flash out of there. You know, getting slowed down is going to make it very, very difficult to disengage. It's a nice lane gank there from Juhan. And without flash on Trymbi now and no flash on Comp, it's going to make it very difficult for this Rogue bot lane to continue pushing forward. Beautiful timing there, though, from Odoamne, immuning the E on that travel time from the Sejuani with the Twisted Advance.
Yeah, definitely really good to stop the damage coming through. Of course, the mana bar is really in Odo's favor. A little bit down in XP, but should level up. We see this again here. Beryl just doesn't even aim for Comp, just goes straight onto Trymbi. Despite Trymbi having the flash, like you said, Azale, the Glacial Augment just makes him so slow. And despite not having the second charge, Juhan can gap close onto it. Fight on the screen there on the bottom right. Looks like Odoamne's found Juhan looking for that top crab. No flash from earlier.
Ulti land, Q back, the pillar there. Juhan does not have flash. That was beautiful. Ward hops back away. Damage to the bottom side. Beryl nearly dies. And now we got a bit more going on. Juhan collapsed on by Larssen. Went back down the Riverton of his own jungle and gets killed for it. Double not going to land here. So it's ready with Trymbi, who feels safe.
Comp has the level 6. There's the MF ult. Won't get the kill, but Comp's very close to having mana for culling. I think DRX know that, and they're going to back away after the wave crash. I think Deft was just aiming at the wave there.
Exactly. That was just a wave clear ultimate there from Deft. He does chunk out Rogue a little bit. This is dangerous, though. They are going to stay around. They will spot this ward, be able to clear it out, but the wave is now neutral. They do have the mana advantage pretty heavily, though. So we'll see if they want to try to push in one more wave. It looks like they will, and I don't think Comp can stay around. He's just too low and has no mana at all.
Kingen's going to start up the Herald, and Malrang's channeling the recall, so it looks like they're just going to give this. Despite killing the enemy jungler with Herald up, they're just going to hand off the blue buff and take a base. So just setting the stakes for the game right now. A lot of trading in bot. Top side goes in Rogue's favor, but they end up losing the Herald. Juhan just greeting a little bit for this crab. We saw him use the flash on bot side, and Malrang going forwards to make sure that he can follow up on this play. Juhan, nice dash over the wall, but Larssen has the mid push to collapse.
Yeah, exactly. There's just no real way out for him. Nicely played here, trying to escape as long as possible. At the end of the day, it would have been better to actually just go back and give it to Odo or Malrang instead of to that Azir, because that could cause some problems in mid lane. Larssen already scaling up very, very nicely, has the lost chapter here early on with that kill gold, so he's going to be feeling good.
So where's the focus for both these teams now? Rogue, you have to imagine looking for some kind of bot plays. Odoamne no TP is going to struggle in this top side, but Dragon's up, and they are winning out in this bot 2v2 in terms of all-in potential. Lucian with the culling. MF ult is down, that's why Malrang's in the bot side river. What does DRX want to do is the question.
This is actually so interesting, though, for Deft, the build. It almost looks like he's doing like a Bloodthirster rush or something. Like, he has BF. Is he going towards multiple items at the same time here? Maybe he just wanted to vamp for sustain? Like, because this is so atypical.
Here's the weird deep cut I'm going for. Essence Reaver.
Essence Reaver plus Vamp for a shield bow later or something?
I'm not even sure Essence Reaver has a BF in it anymore. Actually, I'm trying to think about it. But I don't know. I mean, I know Bloodthirst was actually a relatively common.
It doesn't.
Yeah, so Bloodthirst is a relatively common misfortune item.
But not as a first item. You legit never see that. It's almost always Mythic Rush.
If he's stacking raw AD, he's like, I'm just getting as much ult damage as possible. I'm just going to build AD items and then go Mythic. It's sort of like those early Sraederdurk builds where you're like rushing up with a power spike. That's the only line I can see where he's doing this.
And this used to be something that, this is many seasons ago, MF1 Tricks would actually do this multiple BF item build. They'd do like triple BF buy early and then build them into, IE, BT, etc. back in the day. But not something I've seen in a really long time.
Yeah, I think the logic is the enemy bot lane has sustain and no ignite, so innate healing is always better to just rush something like the Bloodthirster to make the lane phase a bit easier for him, I presume. I wonder if he will finish it. Looks like the components he will, but regardless, DRX will get the dragon.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting, right? Because he has the extra longsword and he doesn't have a crit flow. So, it's like, is he even going in towards it, or is he just building that and then going to something else? But either way, doing pretty well on the DRX side. They get the dragon, they get the herald. We'll see where they want to actually look with this next herald. It always feels like when you're playing against an Azir, trying to open up through mid lane with that herald is a pretty good idea. Get Zeka moving around on the map, try to take Larssen out of his comfort zone, because the longer he's just chilling, farming 10 CS per minute in mid lane, the better things are for Rogue.
And we've seen what Zeka can do in planes already. Outstanding performance, huge step up for DRX. Now playing with Juhan over Piosik. Juhan did play 2 games of Maokai. What now we're seeing is Lee Sin, still a little bit ahead of Malrang. Has the XP advantage, has the farm advantage. Here comes that mid contest you were talking about. They do want to drop it around here. Rogue will push out bot lane, and they should know something's up here because MF and Amumu aren't showing on this bot side. Larssen playing relatively safe. Juhan's just going to help Zeka clear out the wave, and this is the mid lane contest that both teams want to do. Are Rogue want to keep the push? DRX want to threaten kill pressure, so it's just even.
And right now, Larssen's going to sit there and tank the wave. No big problems for him. Going to try to keep the lane on his side, make it uncontestable to kill him as Wave goes into the tower. Worth noting that the 1 turret plate was not gained for gold. It died to mini with no one around, so that 160 does not go into anyone's pockets. Comp comes through on a Gale Force, so 2 mythics now in the inventory as the Gale Force finally comes through for DRX's jungle.
And the Gale Force is where we see the Lucian really come online because the all-in is just that much stronger. DRX do have summoners in bot lane, so they shouldn't be under too much threat. Odoamne has been under his tower the majority of the game. Unleash TP in 2 minutes, but we need to see what this Herald's going to drop because it's about to expire.
It's going to be mid. Juhan just went straight down towards bot side river, moving in towards mid here again. His camps are up top side, but he's just going to straight drop the Herald. They're pulling down Kingen as well. They want to try to threaten here, and if Larssen doesn't spot this Sejuani on the wraparound, things could get a little bit dangerous. There's already 4 members here.
Flashes us, so that might not have landed, but now it's going to be the jungler stuck in place. Malrang gets his stopwatch in time, immunes the Amumu stun, and Kingen without flash simply could not live. The shuffle guarantees it. They hand the kill over. Larssen Larssen 2-0.
I really like what Malrang did there. He just instantly stopwatched, didn't use the ult, didn't use anything else. He just made sure that he was avoiding more CC, so they had to back off the dive, and Kingen, obviously with no flash, just gets collapsed on very easily there by Rogue. So they got the plates, which is what they wanted, but maybe overforcing a little bit there, DRX, with that top prio.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just don't think keeping track of the fact that he actually had a stopwatch. I don't think you actually look for that sort of a dive there. If you know that Malrang has a stopwatch available, trying to hard force onto it. You know, Kingen's there on the wraparound, but of course Odo is going to be coming in with the follow. You can see on the mini-map, you know, Odoamne was already moving down from that top side, was going to be there very, very quickly. And with the stopwatch in place, there's no way you can continue the dive. Odoamne arrives behind Kingen, this flashless Sejuani, and he's just slated to go down. They can give another easy one over to Larssen, who's been the beneficiary of a lot of these early scraps. He's got 2 kills already.
Yeah, 2-0-0 on the board, has the mythic picked up that we saw a little bit earlier on. He's gonna look to solo out this blue buff as Malrang clears out his bot camp. Shouldn't have a very hard time doing that, but with 1 minute on the Herald, that's the next objective that both these teams will be looking for. Taking Herald as DRX is so pivotal because you crack open mid-tier 1 to stop the Azir from being able to wave clear so effectively. So Rogue will try to deny that, you have to imagine, when the mythic gets picked up. There's a Sunfire for Odo, so I think they're pretty happy to take the next fight. Question is, who can set up first? Who will arrive to the objective first? Because face checking into both these comps is pretty scary.
Now, Bloodthirster is, of course, done here, as we called out. That is actually what Deft is going for, just the full sustain. It is a pretty good attack damage stat stick. And if you think you're only team fighting with ulti, the only set you care about is raw AD. Attack doesn't do anything. The crit chance is the same as like a Kraken Slayer or whatever. So, okay, he's going for the biggest ulti possible. The ability to not get one shot, hopefully, by you know, Lucien fighting him in the lane. So we'll see what pays out for him. Of course, cooldown boots are, of course, in for the Lucien, and now in the top river, fighting for vision.
Bit of an awkward scenario here. So Kingen used the TP a couple seconds ago, and Odo is in bot lane with the TP. So now it's a weird situation. Does Deft go top here and contest the Herald, or does he just drop, or does he stay bot and then they have to play a 5v4 on this Herald, right? Does he really want to give up this much creep just to arrive in a fight that Odoamne can TP in anyway? So I think the RX are saying, let's give this up. There's no real way we can contest this. Deft's not here, unless they can look for a steal. Our Rogue don't have that much lockdown. The Nami bubble, the ult, it's all skill shot based, so he can play a little bit on limits here, threaten Rogue as Deft is on the way. The more time they can buy here, the better.
When does Odo TP to make it a 5v4? Here comes the first engage. Sun's gonna land, but will it even kill? No one is in range! And finally, Zeka comes in, knocks down Trymbi. A trade of support for support. That costs an ultimate.
Deft is almost here.
Good smite comes through from Malrang. Ulti's not gonna do a whole lot there. Zeka back out to safety. All the time on to 4. Juhan builds his space, stays alive.
Battle lines drawn, both teams gonna back away, support's full, but Rogue get the objective, DRX get Odoamne's TP, so now they're gonna look for this mid tower because Rogue have to take the long way, but with only the ranged champion being the MF, Deft doesn't really wanna walk up and hit that tower. Dragon up in 10 seconds.
And Comp actually has Herald. I wonder if he'll just even drop it top, and he's up top by himself. He's just gonna use it for the fast recall, potentially save it for later, but DRX staying out on the map here, starting up this Dragon here on spawn, looking to take their second Dragon. Larssen does not have TP. He cancels his base, so it looks like Rogue are thinking about trying to contest this, but they still need about 15-20 seconds for Comp to get there.
Very similar situation to earlier where they need to stall and wait for Comp, try to buy time, but look at Deft's mana, it's incredibly low, no ultimate either, so he's just basically saying, I can't fight this, guys. There's no way we can take it. You're gonna have to take the 5v4 if you want to contest, and DRX just pull away and look for this top tower. Comp is on the way up, Trymbi's mid. This could be a little bit risky for Comp, but I don't know if DRX have the information as to where the Nami is, so it would be a bit of a risky dive. Is it worth going for? Wave extremely small. Beryl's just gonna blast cone out. Rogue get the Dragon.
Honestly, really well handled by Rogue. You know, even just Larssen, you know, showing, canceling his base, coming back out. You know, the threat of him being there meant that Juhan wasn't able to actually finish this off.
Yeah, I think Deft was here a little bit earlier with the bullet time. They could have done a lot of work on top of that Amumu ult, but they're using their cooldowns that pair so well with the MF. By the time Deft arrives, the ult is good. It's onto 4 people, like I said there, Freak, but there's no real CC to lock them in it. They can just kind of step out of it from the sides. Comp dashing away. Nice kick with a double knockup there from Juhan, but not enough sustained damage to continue the fight.
The rest of that fight looked interesting because it felt like this would have been DRX with control of the map, but it went for the waves, it went for the recall, and it was indeed Rogue who got the second Drake of the game, so no one's in pressure for losing a Dragon Soul. As we are towards the best Rift, objectively. I will not be taking any questions. It is Hextech Rift, it's the best one. As wards go down, hand it over to Larssen. Oh, come on, dude, he was next to you. Steals 30 gold from Larssen's pockets.
Stonks
Lights
going
it on
down
fire.
Yeah, Stonks going down. Malrang's trying to contest his wards, get a little bit of vision. That Herald still on Comp, like you said there, Azale. Where is he going to put it? It looks like he's moved from top to mid now. They've swapped the carries here, Rogue. They're putting Larssen top. He's got a tower behind him. They're putting Comp in mid to contest his mid push. But Larssen is very vulnerable on the side. And if Juhan can gap close up here and try to get a sneaky angle into Larssen with a kick, he will fall. That's why Trymbi's hovering. That's why Malrang is unsure whether he should go towards mid. The support jungle of Rogue trying to cover.
Yeah, and you can see that Kingen is not confident to even walk up. You know, they haven't had eyes on a lot of these Rogue members for quite some time. So even though it is just this 1v1 between tanks, Kingen has no idea. They really have very, very little forward vision. You're looking at the map. Their forward line of vision is literally that. They don't have anything else. They have no deep wards whatsoever. So just now that Malrang shows, he knows he is safe to actually step forward and start contesting the wave as DRX are moving in towards that top side, trying to maintain vision in this area. And I think use this to try to make what Larssen is doing on the top side feel dangerous. If you can control vision through that top side river and then encroach into that blue side jungle there, deny some of the vision there, it becomes a lot less safe for Larssen to be pushing out top. And that's why Rogue is contesting so heavily for it.
Yeah, looking for that top side crab now. Malrang Comp staying in mid will help them keep the mid push to help Larssen on this top side. That's where both these teams are focusing because Larssen is so vulnerable. The mid jungle can collapse with Beryl next to them and they can actually make the aggressive play first. Rogue's always going to be on the back foot, but Zeka right now, level 13, exact same as Larssen, with the Proto Belt complete, with the needlessly large rod, will do a lot of damage. Rogue need to be very careful in how they use their CC because they only really have one lockdown and it's the Maokai, and if Odo uses it on someone else, then the Akali can take over a fight.
Herald summon mid lane going to be a target. Nice ulti, good pillar though. Trundle is very good at misfortune as well because you have a very quick access to knock her out of that one turret. Remains at about 40% health. DRX not really in danger here in mid, because that push does almost nothing.
The Lucien really hasn't gotten that much done in the early stages here, but I do think Rogue have shown some real foresight in enabling Larssen and always keeping him safe. It's going to be a TP here onto Zeka. We'll see if they can actually get him. He can just R to safety, I think.
Got a flash, gets knocked out first. Doesn't have a good target just yet. Dealt around. Ulti for Amumu. Is it first kill going to come across? Larssen attacked and down. Killed off. Both junglers with one kill on the board. A safety hop for the Lee Sin, but now Beryl doesn't have an easy way out. Jumps down to one, but he is surrounded and he will die. Caught his third kill of the game.
It looked good there for DRX because Zeka can live, but Larssen pushes him out of the shroud so Malrang can finish him. Good follow-up by Juhan to take down the opposing mid laner as well. It makes it a 1-for-1, but Comp can collapse first. I feel like Deft has never really gotten involved in these fights, and by the time he shows up, he's always a bit too late.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it's a product of taking the longer path. You know, Rogue had vision in that topside river. You're going to be a lot safer moving up there as Comp. You know, even with the strat from MF, which traditionally you are going to have an advantage on these moves, he's having to take the longer path, and as a result, he's not really getting there in time, but they do trade back.
See the TP comes in here. We were a bit skeptical as to whether they could pull this off. I think if the Azir ult doesn't hit, DRX run away with this fight, but because the pushback lands onto Zeka's R1, that means they get vision to actually do damage to him and dish out a little bit. Larssen gets hit by a lot of the CC though.
Yeah, and I thought Odo actually played it really, really smart. He didn't walk out of the brush until Zeka was in range so he could twisted advance, because if you step out of the brush, then you just R1 on Maokai and you're basically gone, right? Even if he follows you with a twisted advance, you'd create too much space. So really smart team fight there from Rogue, and with Comp arriving, Beryl was always slated to fall.
30 seconds on this Dragon, though. Rogue all set up on this bot side. Top tower is extremely low, so we're looking at a cross map here. DRX will get this top tower. It's going to fall, and they can also TP in to contest this Dragon. So Rogue, 20 seconds left, will play on mid and bot waves. They'll get the push. Question is, does DRX want to walk in? Do they have any good wards that Zeka can TP on?
I mean, they got no vision in the whole area, right? Like, it does look very, very difficult for them to enter. And it will be a tough one. Zeka is going to take this down, but with him stepping forward and not actually basing here to spend gold, I don't think they're really going to heavily contest, but he is going to base now. They are trying to work their way forward here, clear out some of these wards, but Malrang is already on the Dragon. Zeka would have to TP now.
It's so hard to walk in. One Nami ult in either of these chokes, and that's it. The fight's basically over. Maokai ult as well can just cover so much ground. Zeka's TP'd in. Level 14 will get spotted out. Beryl!
There's the ulti on the two. Front line, they'll kill Beryl, but will they get one back? Trymbi just stays alive. Front engage comes across again. A kill for the Lee Sin. Deft low, flash to safety. Juhan low, doesn't die either. Gale Force does not find the kill. Odoamne wants to walk forward. The Dragon slows them. Locked down. Kingen running for his life. Comp wants it. The shot's still coming through, and he gets them. 9-4 in the scoreboard. A rampage now, 4 in a row. And they're going to get the second Dragon of the game for Rogue.
Massive fight for Rogue. Juhan's kick there onto Trymbi actually saved him. He kicked him out of the bullet time. A little bit of miscommunication or misplay coming out of DRX on the execution. Beryl's flank initially looked good, but it's a win team fight for Rogue. Malrang's up in 2 seconds, and he has the Hex Gate, so he could get to this Baron quite quickly, but they're just going to call it off.
And that force from DRX, to me, felt a little bit like desperation there, trying to get in at a very difficult angle. You can see, again, Beryl on the side here. The initial engage is pretty good, but by the time the bullet time comes in, Juhan arrives and tries to get the execute kick onto Trymbi, but he survives on the backside. And then Comp moving forward, the Sejuani ult throws in the backline. It's onto Larssen, but the peeling with the Azir ulti there, knocking Zeka out of the R. They all pile forward, and Comp has been largely ignored. He can just crush through the fight.
Yeah, Zeka had his eyes on Larssen the majority of that fight, and Comp was dishing and dealt so much damage, just dashing forwards off of cooldown there. Trymbi lucky to stay alive. Smiles coming out of Comp, of course. Won the LEC, got a pentakill in game 1. DRX looking a bit confused, a bit frustrated, probably dissecting in comms. How do we win these fights? We got a flank on the Amumu, but we still couldn't lock down any of these carries.
Well, and it just doesn't feel like they've been super coordinated on when they're engaging. When the Amumu all comes through, you need everything that feels like landing at the same time. The bullet time has to be there. Akali has to be diving in on the back line. You have to have Larssen arriving, but it's kind of feeling like it's coming in piecemeal. The Amumu all arrives, then maybe 1 or 2 things come in, then the rest of the people are arriving. They're not really all on the same page, and they're not really perfectly set up for the fight, largely because Zeka TP'd in pretty late. By the time Beryl engaged, he wasn't really even in range.
Larssen completed the Rabadon's death cap now. Doesn't really have many defensive tools. Flash is off of on cooldown as well, so knows only has no real self-peel. The Nami's going to be focused on the Lucien as well, so kind of has to play very self-sufficient in these fights. Trymbi stepping up with no flash. Confident enough to clear out this pink, and I think DRX are trying to hold this top push as much as possible.
See, the split push could matter with no defensive tools and Larssen to save for the Merc Treads. Maybe Zeka feels comfortable to go for him. Of course, on 2 items on this Akali herself. Mythic passive on the Rocket Belt is Magic Pen plus the Shadow Flame itself could look good. But just pushing the wave in. Has a level lead for now over Larssen. So the 1v1, not terribly important. 2, 1, and 6, the Azir ult. Peeling Akali in fights, the part that matters.
Definitely does, can interrupt those dashes. We've seen it aggressively when he just stops Zeka from escaping, and we've seen it defensively on the Dragon fight. Question is, when Rogue has flash on Larssen again, do they want to force Nash? Do they want to bait DRX into them? Because Deft's flash is such a long cooldown, and you have so much good zone control in these chokes, like the entrance red with the Nami ult, with the Maokai ult. Does Odoamne want to push out this bot wave, join his team, and then force DRX into them?
Yeah, I mean, it becomes very, very difficult for DRX even entering in these fights, through the Maokai ult, as you're saying, through the saplings, through the Trundle pillar. If the front line is actually hard engaging, you can even just pillar out the back line, pillar out someone like Deft, and actually just kill off the front line, as Rogue has often been able to do in these fights. Then, as the front liners start to fall, the carries can push forward from Rogue, and I just think that they're playing out these team fights so incredibly well. They're maintaining the vision advantage almost throughout the entire game, it feels like. There is one ward that they missed here in Pixel, but overall, Rogue doing a great job through these first 25 minutes.
A lot of pings, Comp stashing forwards.
Jumping in, gets this done though as Beryl flashes into a 3-man ulti. And they're going to shut down 2. Finally, DRX get the ult combo together.
Comp just disrespecting Beryl there so much. Cleanses the Q right into the ulti. Everyone is there. And Comp is going to want that one back. DRX are onto the Baron now. Rogue are positioning here to try to contest. Larssen does still have his cooldowns, but Zeka still has ulti, and that's what we have to watch out for.
DRX know they don't have Smite. Juhan must have been picking this one. It's like 15 seconds away still, so they cannot flip it. They have to get Malrang out of the pit, get him away. And right now, Vision is spotted. They know where he is. Kingen might just in for it, but no, they're going to go for the fight instead.
Oh, Juhan!
He gets the kickback, but will it be enough? Larssen scoops. Larssen stays alive for 1 HP. Deft gets the kill, but he had to dive in to make it happen. So now he's surrounded, trying to live. Finally drops down. Odoamne,
look at Odo go!
Is the Sunfire Aegis enough? He's punching. He's doing what
That's a scary tree.
Being helped by Trymbi. He will burn them down as best he can. The TP comes back in. Zeka is there. Beryl is low. Is his Q up to jump to Krugs? It is. He's got to stay alive. He'll just barely live. He's got no turret, but no one's in the chase anymore.
Spider-Man on Amumu there. Beryl makes the miracle escape. Odoamne as a tank, just 1 versus 3ing the rest of DRX, but this all came from a massive blunder from Comp. DRX could have gotten away with a Baron there. Their turn took a very long time to find Larssen. Eventually he fell so they could win the fight, but the base damage coming out of this Trundle and Maokai was what kept Rogue alive.
And the fact that they actually had no heal cut for the sap magic there, Odo was just drain tanking the whole team. Here it is one more time. It's all about Zeka on the side, and that's why Odo is trying to mark this as he's looking to come around here. He wants to get in on the back line there. Warthog, kick flash onto Larssen, but again, the Azir ulti to peel pushes Zeka back. Deft going forward to try to finish him off, but we're back to live, and Malrang is on the Dragon here, trying to move Rogue to Soul Point.
Rogue's third Drake, if it happens there, Juhan spots it, knows what's going on, be careful, they're gonna dive in here from the Maokai, just locked up, pops the shield, will it be enough, knocks into Comp kills him. Ulti doesn't do a whole ton from Deft as everyone else gets back to safety. Compa is down his flash, but will it matter? Zeka gets nothing from the ulti. Kingen now forced out. Honestly, 5v4 just feels like Rogue owns it. And it's going to be 5v3. Larssen gets the final kill into Kingen.
This Maokai is a really big problem for DRX. He's doing so much work in the fights to lock down the carries. You know, the Larssen and the Akali have so much mobility to gap close onto comp, and Odoamne knows that. He's keeping his eyes on those two players, the mid jungle of DRX, and stopping them from being able to reach his team.
No one can kill him. MF cannot deal with a Maokai like this, just running at her. And when Deft peels back, he's just locking down Zeka, locking down Juhan. They don't have the consistent damage to actually punch through the tree. And now it's Rogue here, bursting down this Baron very, very quickly with the Azir, and it's DRX making the call to just give it up. Rogue now on soul point with Baron. 3,000 or so gold ahead here, and they are looking so damn good. The initial engage, great there. The pillar knocking back Juhan so that Odo can get in range. They try to turn it around onto Comp. The kick comes through, but Comp is able to just flash over the wall out of the range of Deft, and then now where's your damage?
Yeah, very decisive from Odo on the initial engage, just calling his team to chase onto the Sejuani, flashes forwards and gets the kill. But you have a very good question there. Where's the damage really from DRX? They can't take down Comp. Maybe if they took down Comp, they can turn, but even if Comp dies, Larssen's just such a big threat. They have to use this gap close to get onto one carry and then figure out how to get the other one down because Comp is very mobile.
And I mean, it's actually so difficult because when they're committing so much to trying to take down Comp and Larssen, if you're ignoring Malrang and Odoamne, their damage is not insignificant in these fights. This is a Divine Sunder or Trundle, and Odo is just in the mix, slapping people with the base damages that on Maokai that are actually very high.
Comp has the Infinity Edge complete, doesn't have flash though, but if he dashes forwards with the Gale Force, he will delete anyone that walks up from DRX. Even Beryl in these fights is just getting absolutely melted after getting his ult off with this Baron. It looks like they're playing a 4-1-4-man mid. Malrang's the one split pushing. That's how much Rogue value the lockdown onto the flanks. Odo will group up, Malrang will split push, Odo will mark Zeka.
I think it's the right call, and I mean, do you see how annoying this is for Zeka? He's constantly trying to move into that side brush, threaten the flank. Odo just has it perma-sapling because with these high CDR Maokai builds, it's like a 5-6 second cooldown this late into the game for that sapling. You're always going to have the brushes covered. You have map hacks with this champion. He's going to keep you safe on those side angles, and Odo is not afraid of mixing it up with the Akali.
Spirit Visage complete as well, only one healing reduction onto Kingen. Ult's coming out to zone them away. DRX, maybe they can look for a turn here.
Oh, good stun. Oh, Beryl! Bullet 3 isn't going to be enough, though! Scoop into the wall buys some time, but it's still, it is mid laner down. There's only one carry left in this one. Odoamne holds the front line. Zeka dives in, but he can't find the kill. Brings a stopwatch. He's invisible. Q won't push him out of it, but DRX cannot follow through this huge front line of Rogue.
Well, and again, DRX are not on the same page here. Deft had already committed his ulti, then Beryl goes in, and Malrang had already pillared the ulti from Deft, so he had no ultimate when Beryl went in and found that huge engage. If the bullet time is there, they can actually crush through that fight potentially, but DRX just not seeming to have the communication down in this game.
Yeah, it could have been a miracle fight there for DRX to turn the entire game, but they do get Larssen, they do stop the siege, and they do hold on for a little bit longer. The problem is they're down 5k gold. Rogue have a Baron and Dragon spawning. That's the sole point for Rogue.
But just watch Deft. He actually lets the ulti rip here very early on. It gets pillared immediately. Then they go in. This is the communication that needs to be there that Beryl's saying, I'm going to go. You wait for it to go in. Then everyone piles in over top. And you look at how low some of these members got. If you have a full channeled ulti on Odoamne, he's dead.
Yeah, and they use all their spells to take down Larssen, so you can see it's really hard for them to gap close onto Comp, even with no flash. The peel is just so strong. Odo tossing his ult there across the jungle, looking for a singular pick. 1 minute 40 seconds on this soul. Rogue want to keep control around mid and bots, keep control on these waves, keep DRX in their base so when this dragon spawns, they can turn and burn.
100 gold to the Red Bull Baron power play, and worth noting, Zeka also now down a stopwatch. Larssen saved his, still has it. Zeka on the overchase, burn a stopwatch to not die, but didn't get anything for it. So down resources here is DRX.
And Deft is about 1,000 gold away still from that IE, which he desperately needs, but it's very unlikely, unless a fight breaks out, that he's going to have it for the soul fight. And missing that IE at this point in the game really is devastating. He needs that spike because he is their only true consistent damage to threaten the front line of Malrang and Odoamne that are just completely out of control for Rogue.
Rogue still holding this vision line. Anyone dashes forwards, Comp goes on top of them. Uses the culling, doesn't find a kill. There's the Maokai ult to zone them away again, but this could be an angle for DRX. If Kingen can base and look for a TP, they might look for a fight. Two ultimates down on Rogue. Do they stay longer? Do they wait for these ultimates to come back up? 40 seconds on this Dragon. Kingen rejoins his team. Rogue needs to hold this vision line. They need to keep control of DRX.
Only Odo could TP back in. We'll see if he wants to take the recall, but right now they're just going to start just crushing this right side jungle, the path towards this Dragon Soul.
And the cooldowns are just so short at this point in the game. You know, Odoamne on his ulti, they're going to try to look for a brush camp, but it's only a 45-second cooldown here, and there's no vision in the area at all for DRX.
Big items complete those. Zhonya's on Zeka, Infinity Edge on Deft. This is the fight that they've been looking for. 4 items on this Misfortune. Can they find the angle is the question. They see absolutely nothing, and they need information fast because this Dragon will die so quickly. Deft's going through bot with Juhan. He has his flash, level 16 MF, 4 items. How much can they get done? Azale's been wanting them all game long to have some synergy with the Amumu. This is their chance.
5k health, the ulti's there. No way you can make it happen. Being set up by Rogue. They've got all the zone control they need. DRX go too late, too slowly.
I mean, they have the items, but it just takes so long to clear every brush, and then you're slowed by the Maokai saplings. You can't just blindly face check into a Nami bubble. The game will end at this point if they get that big pick. And this is the punish here that we are seeing on DRX for time and time again, losing out on this vision game. Rogue has been just relentless in denying the vision, cutting down these wards. Kingen now very far out. They're going to TP for this. They want this.
There. Yeah, Pillar may be down, but I don't know how he has a way out. No flash available. He got the turret, chooses to stay, and Comp finds his 6th kill.
I thought they would let him live a little bit longer there with 50 seconds on the Baron. He is going to match the death timer of the Baron spawn, so he should be able to TP in. It's a good pick. Investing a TP into it won't hurt too much because Rogue will force the Baron when it spawns, but Kingen will be alive just in case they do decide to start it. DRX will get some vision in Rogue's jungle on the top side as they commit members on the bot side of the map, but we should see Rogue sweep that out very soon.
And this is where it becomes so important for DRX to actually get some vision. They're trying to establish some sort of vision control. They have a pink ward deep, they got the scuttle, they got that one additional ward, but Rogue is going to come in and start to clear all of this out, and as long as they can clear out that vision again, the pink is already spotted. That's your only flanking ward that was really on the map. Now that's very difficult to actually find a good angle here.
Baron's up. Defensive items for Larssen and Comp. Guardian Angel on Comp. Larssen's gone for the Banshees. Wants to avoid getting that one proc. DRX don't have too many spells to do that, so he should have it for when they commit. DRX trying to get some vision in their own jungle. Rogue pushing them out. The Sapling's doing work to give them vision with that Hextech Soul. It's just so annoying the second a Sapling lands. You're just slowed for so much. They're actually barreling down mid.
Gale forces in. Zeka's at a half HP right there. Minions block the rest of the Golem, but still diving forward as Comp feels so safe. With the Guardian Angel, full items. No one's going to stop him. Middle inhibitor goes down.
I actually love this from Rogue. You know, they get full mid prio, just run it straight down. They push Zeka back into the base. Now they know there's no way that DRX is lying in wait here, so they can fully clear out any and all vision and make this lights out for DRX. There's no eyes on anything that Rogue is doing.
They can start Baron over the wall and have people zone like this. This is what the best setup is for Rogue, with Odoamne just being in the face of DRX, showing pressure and slowing them down, exactly the same as the Dragon. How does Juhan get past this? He's trying to find an angle, but it's already gone.
Time. Ulti comes down for good measure. Kingen will just simply die. No one's even around him. They rest from leave, and it's his 5th death of the game. 15-9. The time on in for Odoamne. Sets them all up. Ulti. It's going to mean absolutely nothing. Comp finds a double, burns a stopwatch, resurrecting now as Zeka runs away, but no one is left to watch the fall of DRX, who will drop their first game of Worlds. Mad Lions couldn't do it, RNG couldn't do it, but bet your ass Rogue can! They will find their first win of the World Championship, their first time winning the LEC, and so far, 1-0 at Worlds. The Nexus falls and Rogue is on top.
The first team to take down DRX here at Worlds, undefeated through play-ins. Rogue played a beautiful game here, and DRX had no answers for the Bash Bros from Rogue in the front line there. Odoamne and Malrang going crazy in these late game fights. They could not get through the front line. They could not approach the objectives because Odoamne was untargetable. You cannot even go for him. He's keeping them out from every single objective. There's just no real answer to it. When you're keeping Larssen and Comp this safe, they're always going to succeed in the 5v5s.
Yeah, as much as Comp was doing so much damage and playing with so much confidence, did make that one mistake, barring that exceptional performance from him, but it's Odoamne who's just in the face of DRX constantly. It's Odoamne who's just shutting down these carries, not allowing them to enter, and just kind of saving the game next to Malrang. So much frontline for DRX to deal with. It's so hard for Misfortune to ult every time she does Pillar. Anytime she's in range of auto-attacking, she's rooted, she's knocked back, the ult comes out from the Maokai. It's so hard for DRX to navigate fights up against this Trundle Maokai.
Absolutely. I mean, between Nami Wave and Trundle Pillar, and you have a limited window when you actually can find that engage. DRX was never able to get vision, so they couldn't actually pull off these pincer plays that you want to with this style of comp. You know, they really wanted to be the ones maintaining vision, and having Zeka on the side coming from one angle, while Beryl's coming from the other, and everyone's collapsing at the same time, bullet time over the top. But Rogue never gave them the in to do it because they so masterfully denied their vision and made them approach through a sapling minefield that was denying every angle they wanted.
Good showing from the first seed of the LEC, but let's not forget that was the 4th seed from the LCK, right? That was an expectation that I think LEC should have actually overcome in a best of 1. Vedius was saying it on the desk. Now it's a bit scary the later the tournament goes on. We got Fnatic up against T1 later on, but I think it's just a strong showing from Rogue, who have always struggled in the World's group stages, but they've kept their trend of winning the first game of Worlds.
That's true. Let's go to see if they can do more than just the one game, of course.
Yeah.
You know, that's the big thing. I mean,
look at Odoamne's damage.
Oh yeah, no.
What?
I mean, it's Bruiser versus Bruiser. Sunfire Aegis is a damage item. Let's be clear, right? It's practically demonic in place.
Azir was a late game
burn people
carry.
down. It's no.
It's the tree, baby.
It is the tree. He did incredibly well, honestly. It was cool to see. By the end of the game, you're talking about how Rogue had all the cards. You got to walk through saplings, everybody got soul, everything's locked up. I feel like the first half of the game, though, was DRX just were not together. You think back to when they beat RNG, DRX came back in that game off decisive team fighting, making the right call at the right time. This one wasn't there. So, hey, there's 5 more games to play, maybe more tiebreakers. DRX are better than what they showed in this game.
Yeah, and Azale was highlighting it all game wrong, how the synergy just wasn't there in the fights. They needed to be on the same page.
I mean, I think we've seen that, you know, a number of times throughout the World's group stage so far. Some of these compositions, you know, can work, but the barrier of execution is very, very high. I think we saw some of the NA teams falling prey to that with C9 and 100 Thieves. Those compositions can work, but it's really tough to pull it off because everything has to be so well coordinated. You need to find the right angles. We're seeing so much success with champions like Maokai because it's way more straightforward.
To me, he's actually the new champ of the tournament. Like, Maokai, I think, should be 100% from here on out, and it should be banned red side if not first pick.
Well, and I've got to say, how much more OP did it look when it actually had income from top lane?
No,
right? It was crazy.
We've seen Hilly play at support, we've seen it top, we've seen it jungle. It's just so flexible.
And no one built to kill frontline, right? It's press the attack, no attacks, get a misfortune. It's good. It's what it's going to look like in a lot of those fights. So if you cannot make it to San Francisco for the World Finals, do not worry. You can watch on the big screen with friends and family at select theaters near you. Use the QR code below to grab those tickets. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited to watch Worlds, and I got to say, I've watched a lot of World Finals from like a viewing experience, big screen, people around. It's actually really fun still there.
Oh yeah, especially when you're like with a crowd of people, and I think everyone's
popcorn.
cheering. Popcorn, you know, you throw the popcorn in the air when someone makes an insane pill and just stand up. It's just loads of energy, and I feel like you can have energy yourself when things happen and sit up in your chair, but when the whole like audience next to you is cheering, you feel so obliged to just join in, right? The atmosphere is just so powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to get an interview soon, so this is why we are still up on camera, but we will be talking with some of the winners, I assume, very shortly. So stay tuned for that one before we toss over this one. So, I mean, at this point, LEC greater than Asterisk based on world performances.
Well, they've got 3 games today, and they're 1-0 right now, so at least they're not going to go 0-3.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to talk about is just the way you just talked about Maokai and how strong it is. And I feel like there's a couple of meta-defining picks. First, it was Aatrox. Now it's Maokai. The question is, can teams find counters to these champions? Can they find something like a Kane into Maokai? Can they find something like the Trundle that could work into Maokai in terms of taking the resistances? The problem, I think, in terms of shutting down this pick specifically, is it's so flexible that even if you pick a champ to stop it, if they're on red side, they're just going to flex it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was interesting, though, because on red side, they actually had the opportunity to try to counterpick this Maokai, you know, knowing it was going up towards top, right? And they decided to go for the Lee Sin instead of something more like a Fiora, or you can go to even like a Darius or a Camille, things that really can try to punish in the 1v1. They went for it, didn't work out.
Yeah, Trundle taken away at, you know, on a relatively early draft spot on the blue team as well there. So we are ready for this one. We've got Shocks on stage with Odoamne for a Verizon postgame interview.
Yeah, I just had to talk to Odoamne, aka the raid boss Maokai. That was so annoying for DRX. First up, congratulations, Odo.
Thank you. It was a great game of Maokai. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, we know it's a super strong pick right now in the meta. How much did the value go up also because of some of the interactions in their comp, like the Akali and whatnot?
I mean, I don't know. We went into 4 or 5, and there was like a lot of top lane bans, and then it was mostly, we felt like it wasn't really Maokai that was going to be OP top. It was more like Trundle had a lot of value into their comp, and we were like, we kind of had decent top lane bans to facilitate, you know, tank top or whatever. So I was like, yeah, I mean, it's going to work, and especially top, I'm going to get a lot of gold with it. But I don't know, I felt like even though I'm kind of blinding it, there wasn't really like a lot of real counters versus it, and there's a high chance they put Sejuani top. I was thinking they're gonna go something else than Larssen in the jungle, and then, I don't know, like the matchup top was gonna be always fine because I could just dodge his E always, but I don't know, I felt like it was a monster value for top lane Maokai this game.
Yeah, it absolutely was, and also the way you played it in some of the tricky moments, I guess. But did you feel like you were in danger at any part in that mid to late game?
No, because the way the team fight dynamics were, I was mostly concerned for my backline, and I was most of the time just trying to keep an eye out on everything because I know that they want to dive a lot, and at the same time they can also burn me if I misstep a lot. So it was in a way hard because I was trying to not go super deep in those engages, but most of the time I felt like I was going to be okay. I just wanted to provide as much CC and peel for my backline.
I love that you say you didn't want to go too deep in those engages, but I did see you at some points just absolutely going forward with no but.
Yeah, I mean, at some points I was like, everyone was like, no, don't go, and I was like, bro, just come with me, I can do this, you know, because I don't know, I was out. I felt like I got to a point where I was out of control this game, and they just cannot do anything to me.
Okay, well, a great start for Rogue, but obviously only one game. There are so many left to play. When you guys were in Sweden, you ended up winning the title, and you said so much was attributed to the fact that you landed in Sweden and seemed like you were a different team. You were all on the same page. Has that continued into Worlds?
In a way, yes and no, because in Sweden we didn't really get to scrim, Here we had good morale at some point, but then scrims happened and it went down a bit. But I mean, the boys are motivated, everyone's super happy to be here, and yeah, I mean, scrims don't really mean anything. We'll see. I mean, we still have a lot of games, you know. We cannot just be super happy after we beat DRX. We still want to make it out of this group, and I'm not going to let the boys relax too much.
Okay, I think that's fair. Final question. 2016, you were also here in North America. You made it to the semifinals. I think you made a lot of fans then. And I asked a similar question to FLICKR because he actually won his last World Championship in America. Is there similar good vibes for you playing again here and bringing back those memories?
I mean, I do have Greek ADC and Polish support again, so I have that going for me. Yeah, I mean, that would be the goal, you know, if like, we're US first seed, we cannot just have, you know, just some lame attitude or just like, we're just here to compete and all of this stuff. We have to show up because, yeah, I mean, it's in a way heritage, I guess. If you take the mantle of US first seed, you have to show up.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you had such a great showing in your first game. Congratulations,
Thank
Odo.
you.
Great start for Rogue, and it feels like he still has a couple of fans from last time. Back over to you.
Thank you so much, Shocks. Odoamne says, if you're going to take up the mantle of EU's first seed, then you better show up, and show up they did here in their first game of the group stage, taking down DRX. Vedi, I'm sure that's got to feel good.
Yeah, it does feel good. There's always a bit of concern whenever it's EU versus Korea, and I talked about how first seed versus fourth seed expectations should be high, and there were a couple moments in the mid-game where I was a little bit concerned, but when I saw this draft, the first thing I said in the green was, this is a Rogue draft.
I was going to say, I was only concerned for Rogue until I saw that first pick.
Like this,
and then I was like, oh.
Oh, Maokai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did get their hands
Rogue
on the
wins.
Maokai, and like as Odoamne was saying, like they had a pretty traditional front-to-back team fight comp, and we saw how it played out a lot in the games. The only scary thing was how quickly this front line could potentially die. And I think that the way in which they played the team fights was impressive to see. But I think that DRX had the agency required in order to make the outplays happen. The question is, could they actually do it? And unfortunately, they weren't quite able to pull it off.
Caps' dad is currently heckling us and yelling at you, which is pretty great. But I agree with you in terms of the draft. To me, a winning draft is 2 pushing lanes and better scaling. And that's what they did. Lucien Nami was pushing, Azir was pushing. Maokai was even arguably pushing. It was almost 3, so just a total outdraft by Rogue.
I mean, yeah, you heard Odo say, like, happy to take the Maokai given the bans, was confident pretty much no matter what the response was from the other side. And yeah, I really do like the diversity in the comp that Rogue brought, having a little bit of early game pressure and power in the bot lane. A lot of people talking about how maybe Lucien Nami doesn't belong anywhere in the meta anymore, but this Rogue bot lane proved otherwise.
Yeah, I was really surprised to see it locked in. And as you rightly said, we talked about it earlier, right? I was expecting Rogue to actually go for Deft's head in the early game. I wasn't expecting there to just be a straight up 2v2 kill from Comp and Trymbi. But I think that this showcases to the international stage why so many Europeans are excited to see Comp here, because mechanically he is incredibly talented and he has earned the right to call himself the best AD carry in Europe right now.
Yeah, I think with the Misfortune locked in, that's what enabled they kind of activated the Lucien Nami because they can run down Misfortune at any point in the mid game when they are able to land that first Nami slow. And then you can also just see a little bit of the Maokai difference. Die for Crab.
Yeah, I mean, disgusting performance on the Maokai. The other interesting thing that I want to just like harken back to in the Odoamne interview is kind of how he talked about the beautiful thing about Maokai is it can kind of fill two different roles, right? In the times when he needs to push forward, be the engage, be the aggressor, he can be that. But he also mentioned that as they got to the mid and late games, more of his focus was around peeling for his backline, playing the protector.
Yeah, and I think that when you also watch how Larssen played this as well, they had so many great disengage tools, right? You think about the Maokai, you think about the Trundle pillar, you think about the Azir wall. It was very obnoxious for DRX to play this game, and while on paper you look and like, oh, Zeka's on his Akali, you've got Deft on a Misfortune that's going to be able to dish out a lot of damage, paired up with the Amumu, and a lot of their engages look good.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's so much disruption, there's so many things that get in your way, it ends up becoming very difficult for DRX to play the fights. And it was actually great to hear Odoamne saying, like, there were times where a lot of these fights were quite hard, and I think that that's the respect you need to give to DRX, because they are still representative of the LCK, and their individual talent is something you still have to fear.
Yeah, the only thing that gave me pause in the draft for the side of Rogue was letting the Akali go through based on the performance that Zeka had put up in the play-ins, but they dispatched with that in pretty solid fashion. One other fun fact on the Misfortune, BT first, found out that that's because BT shield plus shield or overheal allows you to maintain your strut as long as the shield is active, because you yourself are not taking damage. Fun little note there, that's why he didn't go for a Mythic first. Now, we're going to a break, but on the other side of this break, we got Evil Geniuses looking to redeem their MSI record as they face off against G2. But as we go, check out our 1+ cam for behind the scenes look at our first day of groups in New York City.
That's the most I can give you.
Fine. Then it's time for the ace up my sleeve. My beloved squishy pig with
original holographic cover art.
Hey, Ash, what you selling?
Save the references, Jake from State Farm. I'm saying goodbye. This little piggy went to the game store.
You don't have to sell your favorite games. State Farm has coverage options, so you get a rate that fits your budget.
Thanks, Jake. Hands off the squish!
For surprisingly great rates that fit any budget, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Call or click to get a quote today.